Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Up first, Attorney General Nikki Sharma will join us. She's just announced an expanded legal aid service for families fleeing violence. We'll talk to her and ask you, what are the barriers and how would added funding help? Plus, it is Black History Month, and there's a contest aimed at helping Black entrepreneurs overcome unique challenges. We're going to hear about that coming up. I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Well, this morning, BC Attorney General Nikki Sharma and West Coast Leaf and the Centre for Family Equity joined together to announce $29 million over 3 years in new funding for legal aid. Now, that funding is directed towards supporting people experiencing family violence. She's going to join us in just a moment, and we are asking you, what are the barriers for people trying to flee family violence, and how would legal aid funding help? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. By email, you can reach us at bctoday@cbc.ca. You can also text us if you'd rather do that. It's at 236-330-2623, 236-330-2623. And BC's Attorney General Nikki Sharma joins me now. Good afternoon, Attorney General.
Oh, nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us exactly what you announced today and what this does to help?
So what we announced today was an historic expansion of legal aid services in BC. So 29.1 million that will go to not only just generally expanding family law legal aid, so up to 4,500 more people will get access to legal aid services for family law matters, but very specifically for people that are experiencing family violence. We know that that's extra supports are needed to make sure people can get to safety, and legal supports are a key part of that. So we announced today at the launching of a clinic that will help support specifically people get legal support when they're experiencing family violence, and also changes to our legal aid criteria to make it easier for them to get more hours of legal aid support. So lawyers there to fight with them and get them to safety when they need it.
This settles a 7-year-long court battle going back to BC Supreme Court. It was the Single Mothers Alliance, what it was known as then, launched a constitutional challenge saying the province and the Legal Services Society, which is now known as Legal Aid BC, failed to provide women leaving abusive relationships with enough legal aid. What did that mean for women who were trying to do that? What does a lack of funding for legal aid do in terms of creating hurdles for someone fleeing violence?
Yeah, it's a really important question. I saw this on the front line as a lawyer. When people are in the situation of wanting to leave a family violence situation for safety, there's often, and in every situation, a power imbalance, right? Where the other side can control money, power, and also has abusive and coercive control over the other person. So that puts that person in a very difficult situation when they're trying to flee. They're trying to make sure that they're protected, their kids are protected, that they have financial supports to flee, that they can move on with their life in a safe way. And it's a really key point in that person's life to have legal advice, legal support, so we can balance the power imbalance that exists already in that relationship and make sure that that person gets the legal advice and supports they need. So I think what that does is it leads to better protections for the person, the children, and financial supports that they may need to move on, and a safer way to do that. So I think lawyers are so key in that time, because oftentimes these issues involve a courtroom or they involve legal orders, and you need a power balance. You need a better balance situation to get a better outcome.
And do we have enough lawyers working in that field?
I know we have a really strong family law bar in BC, and with this expansion, what that will mean is we're going to call upon more family law lawyers to do legal aid work. with the hours that we're providing. So Legal Aid BC will be reaching out to make sure that more family law lawyers out there take on these type of files. I think it's a great thing not only for the family law bar, because I know there's a lot of people out there that practice this area that are committed and want to give more hours to their clients to make sure there's better outcomes. So it gives them that ability to do that, to really represent in a longer way, in a more meaningful way, their clients. And it also gives the people that are going through these situations more legal support to get them through a better path. So I think there's a lot of potential for growth here.
My guest is BC Attorney General Nikki Sharma. This morning, she, along with West Coast Leaf and the Centre for Family Equity, announced expanded funding and a new legal aid clinic for expanding legal aid, and specifically directed toward people experiencing family violence in BC. And we're asking you, this is a tough question that we're asking. What are the barriers that people face when trying to flee family violence? How much of it has to do with trying to navigate the legal world and those legal barriers? You can let us know what might help. How much would this funding help? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, we are bctoday@cbc.ca. And this morning at the news conference, they also heard from someone talking about what this funding would mean. May Eagle-Speaker is a member of the board for Centre for Family Equity, and May spoke about what this funding would mean for families like hers.
Today, I am thinking about all the people who have stayed in abusive relationships because they are afraid. They are afraid they won't have the support and legal representation they need to help keep themselves and their children safe. Today, I'm thinking about my mother and others who face similar challenges and what would have helped them. Some parents, like my mother, had to flee and move to a different province to keep themselves and their children safe. There are so many low-income lone mothers who feel trapped and may decide to stay in an abusive relationship because they don't think they will be able to get legal support from a lawyer. And in these situations, children pay the price of staying in homes where there is abuse. I witnessed intimate partner abuse when I was a child, and that harm lasts a lifetime. Low-income families experiencing abuse need to access the legal representation. They need to stay safe and find stability. This announcement is very exciting for all the people now who are asking for help, particularly those fleeing abuse. These are people that I know personally and who are reaching out. I have a wish for the future of these new services. I hope that the new services are trauma-informed legal services that treat people with respect and integrity, that Indigenous people will feel seen and heard, and that services are focused on advocacy and family connections.
That's May Eagle-Speaker, a member of the board for the Centre for Family Equity, speaking this morning. We are taking your calls on this as well, asking what are the barriers for people trying to leave family violence situations, and how would this additional funding for legal aid help? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. Nikki Sharma is BC's Attorney General. May Eagle-Speaker was very emotional there. What have you been hearing from women and children as she was saying what she witnessed?
Yeah, I just want to start by the gratitude that I have for West Coast Leaf and Centre for Family Equity and people like May who have fought hard to change the system. I think I saw that as a lawyer too, that this time when you don't have legal support can leave a lot of people vulnerable in unsafe situations, not knowing where to turn to for help. And she also mentioned, which I think is a profound one, is that children are often witnessing this as well.
Yeah.
It leaves the parents in an awful situation. And I'm just grateful for their advocacy and that we were able to come to this outcome together where we can see a future where people can seek safety faster, where they can get the legal support they need without worrying about how they're going to pay for it. how they're going to get the advice they need, how their kids are going to get the protection orders they need to stay safe. I'm really looking forward to working with May, and I think she raised some good points about making sure that the clinics trauma-informed, culturally sensitive, so it
That's
advocates.
that's just it, right? When May Eagle speaker was what she was saying there was, I hope that this is trauma informed. I hope that these will be culturally sensitive advocacies. When you talk about recruiting more lawyers into legal aid, how are you going to ensure that that is the case?
Yeah, so one of the really groundbreaking things about this clinic model that we're going to be launching, and it'll be up and running but before the end of the year, is that it'll have 8 lawyers in it, navigators, paralegals, and support staff. So they will be focused just specifically on working with people that are experiencing family violence. So that kind of very targeted group or team helps us really make sure that there's the proper training in place, that people have the supports they need, that they're able to be referred to services if they need them, and they understand what trauma-informed legal practice means and what it means to advocate and be culturally safe for people. So that level of, I think, targeting is what's going to get at what hopefully May is hoping for, and that we need to continue to work that. We were able to arrive at the outcome today with the 29 million in the historic expansion of legal services together. So I guess the next step now is working together to make sure that those supports get to the right people and that they're done in the right way.
Something else that we've talked about is what's needed when it comes to judges. And you face some criticism from the Law Society of BC in November over your comments that judges in a province should have that trauma-informed and victim-focused training to deal with these kinds of cases. What about judges? Would there be an additional training for them? Do you still see that to be the case?
Yeah, I think there's many things in the system that we need to focus and work on. I was very pleased with a recent conversation I had with Chief Judge Gillespie about her focus on making sure that new judges have very targeted and mandatory training when it comes to sexual violence and trauma-informed counseling. So right off the bat, when they're entering the field of the judiciary, they have that training. I also think we need to focus on changing the family law as it applies to family violence. And that's work that my ministry is working on right now. We're asking for people to come forward and help us learn about how we can do better with the law, right? The law side of it, how you get orders, what the law says about, entitlement and how family violence is seen and how we can make that part better. And then this part of it is making sure that people have legal representation when they're going through this process with family violence, that imbalance that shows up in the court system where you can't have justice if somebody's not represented. I remember working at a legal program once where I was working with women fleeing violence. And as a lawyer, I could only give an hour of my time to somebody who had to then go into a courtroom and face her accused and the person that had committed violence against them. So it puts the lawyer in such a difficult situation and the person going through it. And then I'm really hopeful with this legal support, we can have better outcomes to make sure that those people that are out there looking for better representation or better ability for, people that were in a position that I was in before can have more time to sit with people and get them the support they need to go through this process.
Nikki Sharma, thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Nikki Sharma is BC's Attorney General. And we are asking you, what are the barriers that victims of family violence face, and what are the supports that are needed when it comes to legal aid and navigating the legal system? Our numbers again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. Catherine is joining us from Nanaimo. Catherine, what are the barriers? What do you make of this added funding?
Yeah, I think any funding is a great asset. I'm coming from a service provider standpoint. I'm a victim services worker myself, and the biggest barrier that I see for victims is, or not the biggest, one of the main barriers is the decision to leave comes down to not about is it safe or unsafe, but where am I going to go and will I lose my house?
Housing.
Yeah, because they can't, it's not a matter of just having transitional housing. That's just a Band-Aid, right? And after that transitional housing, them leaving the house and the way housing rules work, once they leave, that person kind of has a leg up on, they're the ones that stayed in the home, so they keep the home. So I've seen a lot of victims who cohabitate, and they might try to break up, and then they try to split up the house and live with their abuser because they can't afford mortgage or rent on their own. And so then we have repeat police calls because they're still living in that abusive relationship. Even if they've tried to end the relationship, they're still in the same house.
Wow.
And there isn't enough transitional beds at all in addition to that. And then what happens second stage after that transitional bedding. So there's so many factors. It's not just a matter of I need to be safe, I'm ready to leave. It's can I leave? Do I have the resources to leave? And how am I going to continue to provide a home for my children if I leave this house that I can only afford with this
Are there,
offender?
you talk about transitional housing. What about, long-term supportive housing for women fleeing, for victims of family violence? Have you seen, is there enough of that, or do we have that?
No, there's definitely not enough. I know Nanaimo is just expanded and building more, but I actually work at the Ladysmith jurisdiction, and there's zero housing because it's a smaller community. So they also have to leave. A lot of times, the victims I deal with, they have to, if they're going to go to transitional housing, they've got to go to Duncan or Nanaimo. So then their children are out of their school jurisdiction, and they have to be able to afford to drive them back and forth to school to keep those children in that school. So there's no housing even within their community to escape to.
Catherine, really good perspective. Very important to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
That's Catherine in Nanaimo. It's 12:22, 1:22 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today. And as you heard, Nikki Sharma, BC's Attorney General, was with West Coast Leaf and the Centre for Family Equity this morning announcing $29 million in new funding for legal aid. We also heard from Raji Mangat, who's the Executive Director of West Coast Leaf, and she spoke about the impact the funding will have on the most vulnerable.
More than 2 decades ago, the provincial government significantly cut legal aid services for some of BC's most vulnerable people, single moms who needed help escaping violence at home. For those women, the cuts meant an imbalance of resources in court when they face their abuser, and it meant approaching daunting legal hurdles alone during some of the most difficult times in their lives. The announcement the Attorney General made today means the province will begin providing an unprecedented level of support for people in these circumstances. Today's announcement means people experiencing family violence will have access to specialized services tailored to help meet their complex individual needs, and that the services will be available to them from the beginning of their journey through the family law system right to the end. In short, this new tier of services will make the family law legal aid system more responsive to the on-the-ground realities that survivors face. And this outcome shows us the impact of collective action. When we come together in support of those whose voices are silenced and whose needs are going unmet, we help create a more equitable society for all. We wouldn't be here today.
We're asking you today on the program, what are the barriers intimate partner violence victims face when navigating the legal system, and what are the supports that are needed? And this is in light of new funding announced by the province today in legal aid funding specifically for victims of family violence. You just heard from Attorney General Nikki Sharma. Let's take a call now from Bonnie in Nelson. Hi, Bonnie. What do you make of this announcement, and what are the supports needed?
I think it's absolutely terrific, and I was just saying that being a senior, I have been there when we had these services, these legal. It's not like we're inventing the wheel. Feminists came up with transition houses to help with that exact problem, where for women to go where they're safe. Transition houses like in Nelson and elsewhere in the province lock the doors and don't tell anybody where those places are to protect those women. And there are not enough transition houses, but feminists started all these organizations. LEAF was one of those organizations. And when before the last, well, I guess 20 years, 30 years, I don't know, since the Liberals got in and cut all these services, it's like a generation who's forgotten that we actually invented and need these services more and more every day.
And when you think about, you're talking about the BC Liberals, when they come in, they reduce funding for legal aid, and this was back in 2001.
They did. They reduced. That's why we are now reinventing the wheel.
Okay. What about then the legal aid system? Why is it important to provide that funding, especially, you know, as we heard from May Eagle speaker, help lower income families navigate that system?
Well, the thing is that it's kind of you were talking about the judges. The women face Oh, I can't hear you.
No, go ahead.
Women who have come to court with a sexual assault, for instance, face judges who are biased against women coming to court. So that's another level at which we need to change to train judges to acknowledge the lives of women and what they face. And when we talk about domestic violence, it's a euphemism. Men beat up their wives, and the women have to get their kids out of the house, and they're most in danger from being murdered without a safe place to go to. Now, this is not all men, and this is not every situation, but it's enough that we have, as I said, feminists have built these transition houses and so that we serve it. But we've never had second stage housing. So with transition houses, it's like 30 days, and then we were wanting to build second stage housing after that.
Okay.
It's never been done.
Bonnie, that's exactly what our previous caller was talking about as well, right? The lack of housing as a challenge, not just transition, but as you call it, second stage, which is where, you know, how someone can plan for their future beyond that immediate transitional housing. Thank you so much for your call and your perspective in Nelson.
Oh, yes, I'm from Nelson. I've been a feminist for 50 years.
Great to hear from you, Bonnie. That's Bonnie joining us from Nelson. And on the line now is Kim Hawkins, who's Executive Director with the Rise Women's Legal Center. Good afternoon, Kim. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What do you think will be the impact of this $28 million over 3 years?
Well, yeah, we're really excited at Rise Women's Legal Center to see what happens out of this funding. I mean, this is a really important day for access to justice for survivors of intimate partner violence in BC. And so huge congratulations to our friends at West Coast LEAF, the Centre for Family Equity, as well as to Minister Sharma, who as she noted herself, has a history of working in this area, and to Michael Bryant, the CEO at Legal Aid, who will now have some additional resources. So we're really excited to see what happens with the new legal clinics. I've just really enjoyed listening to Bonnie's description, because I think Bonnie brought an amazing historical perspective to this. And I think it's kind of important to put this caveat in and saying that having family law legal aid clinics, this is not sort of a weird or radical solution. This is something that we used to have in BC. They were cut many years ago. Many provinces have family law legal clinics. And it's very exciting to be on the cusp of having some government-funded family law legal aid clinics again. Our clinic, Rise, does provide legal services, but because of the way we're funded, we're not always able to provide the kind of representation that a legal aid clinic will provide in terms of taking things to court all the way through. So this is really exciting. And family law legal aid clinics, they provide certain benefits over a certificate system. So they really are able to employ salaried staff lawyers who can provide continuity of services, who can develop specialization, who have the time and the ability to see cases all the way through, and to deal with family law cases that are very complex and often not easy to solve in a short number of hours. So it really builds in the ability to provide much more holistic help to people, as well as to provide efficiency to the lawyers, to sort of develop expertise, to share resources, to share research. And this is a really, I think, important model that has been missing from BC for a really long time now. And it's really great to see that coming back. And I really hope this is the first step and that we'll see many more family law legal aid clinics to follow this one.
Okay. Kim, I'm just going to jump in there, and I know that you're going to hang around and take some calls with us as well. Very much appreciated, and we are taking your calls on this, asking you what are the barriers for victims of family violence. So when it comes to navigating the legal system, and when you hear about this added funding for legal aid and new legal aid clinics, what difference do you think that's going to make? Taking your calls on the open line, and Kim Hawkins is my guest, Executive Director with the Rise Women's Legal Center. We'll go back to Kim and your calls coming up after the CBC News Update with Zara Premji.
Good afternoon. Police in Abbotsford say a driver has been arrested after two youth say they were deliberately struck by a vehicle. Constable Art Steele says officers were called to a neighborhood on Wednesday and found the teens who said the driver intentionally struck them after a disturbance. Steele says the teenagers had minor injuries and were taken to hospital while the driver remained at the scene and was placed in custody. And Vancouver Coastal Health now says a standalone supervised drug consumption site would not be the most appropriate service for people at risk of overdose in Richmond. It says in a release that supervised consumption sites work best in communities where there is a significant concentration of people at risk. This follows 2 days of heated discussions at Richmond City Hall. Council voted in favor of exploring the possibility of having a consumption site at Richmond Hospital. Now a quick look at your BC weather from Environment Canada. For the North Coast, sunny but windy and highs to 7. For the Peace region, sunny skies and highs of -2. For the Central Interior, you're looking at sunny but cool today, a high to -5. For the Boundary and Kootenay regions, it's cloudy and even a chance of flurries, the high near 0. For the Okanagan and Southern Interior, Mr. Sun is there for you, but a high near just 0. Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, mainly cloudy and a high near 7. And that's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Zara, thank you very much.
You're so welcome, my friend.
That is Zara Premji. Yes, my friend. Thank you. That's Zara Premji with the CBC Vancouver newsroom. We'll go back to our calls on legal aid in just a moment. But right now, another story for you. BC's wine industry in for a season of catastrophic crop loss this year. Experts say a prolonged cold snap in January damaged vineyards right across the Okanagan Valley. CBC's Brady Strachan reports.
You can see the cracking.
The prognosis is grim. Severe winter damage in vineyards across the Okanagan. Gordon Fitzpatrick's vines at his winery near Summerland were not spared.
And taking this wood and spur pruning that, and then so we're kind of hedging our bets, right? And see what pushes.
An extreme cold snap in January is the culprit. Temperatures dropped below -25 degrees right across the Okanagan and killed off many of the buds that would have been this year's wine grape crop.
Damage is substantial, greater than 90%. So both the primary and secondary buds, most of them are dead, they're discolored. And so that has everybody worried about what's going to happen in the spring and how many tons are we going to have in the vineyards up and down the Okanagan Valley.
The low temperature, and you can see it got down to -30, but more.
A new report by the BC wine industry predicts catastrophic crop loss this year across the valley, with only 3% of a normal harvest. This on the heels of last year's severe season that saw only half the expected harvest.
Well, back-to-back and consecutively like that is the perfect storm. So it's worrisome. I think it just speaks to the challenges of climate change.
And with little or
This is BC Today. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining us on CBC Radio 1, on CBC Television, and live streaming as well on YouTube, our website, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC News app. We've been asking you, what are the barriers that intimate partner violence victims face in family law, and what are the supports that are needed? This is in light of an announcement this morning from BC's Attorney General announcing added funding for legal aid. Well, again, we've been joined right now by Kim Hawkins, Executive Director with the Rise Women's Legal Clinic, and we've been asking her what impact this kind of funding will make. Kim, we talked about the culturally sensitive and trauma-informed advocacy with both May Eagle Speaker, who we played a clip from, as well as the Attorney General. Is there enough of that?
No, I don't. I don't think that there is. And I think one of the things that you see with the family bar is that we are very focused on understanding the parts of family law that require what people think of as technical expertise. So people would always understand the need to understand what the law says, to understand how property division works, how pension division works. But what we're not always very good at, and I talk about people generally, but obviously there's a huge range of kind of skill level and sensitivity within the bar. We're not always very good at those soft skills, and we're not always very good at making use of working with family law advocates who are around the province, with working with support workers and bringing in those people who could actually help us and teach us how to be better at trauma-informed practice, how to work better with different populations. And there's often no mandatory training for lawyers for these types of skills. So I think as a family lawyer, it's really something that's incumbent on us to seek out the kinds of training that we need and the kinds of support that we need, and learn about the resources available in our communities to actually be able to deliver services to clients in a way that really is able to help them and is able to meet their needs, right? And you know, I'm thrilled that there's a lot more resources that are becoming available. I think, you know, compared to 10 or 20 years ago, there's a lot more out there for lawyers to avail themselves of, but it's an area where I think as a profession, we have a lot of work to do.
We have an email question here from Jackie, who writes, I'm wondering why it's always the women who have to leave. Is there support for women who wish to have their partner leave so the kids don't have to move to new communities, leave pets behind, and change schools, etc.? By default, the abuser should have to leave. What about that question?
Well, there are mechanisms within family law to be able to do that. The difficulty is if you don't have access to a lawyer and you don't have access to legal aid, your ability to access those kinds of remedies through the courts are limited. So, you know, again, maybe, you know, it would be wonderful if part of what we see out of the new funding for legal aid and the extended hours for counsel is that we get to see some more of those applications being brought. But that is very hard for people to navigate on their own, those kinds of applications.
That's interesting because it ties right into the housing question that our two callers raised, right? Acts as a barrier for people. What do you hope to see then? What will you be watching for with this funding and how it's doled out?
I'm really looking forward to seeing and hopefully, you know, being able to provide some feedback and expertise around developing family law clinics. We developed Rise starting in 2016, so we've been around now for coming up to 8 years and have worked in this area for a while. And I think we have a lot to share and a lot of ways that we can support the new work. I'm also really interested to see what happens with the expansion of hours for legal aid. So one of the problems that we see right now with legal aid is that even when people qualify, because of the limits on hours and because of the way that legal aid files are paid, lots of family lawyers are not actually willing to take legal aid files. So right now in BC, even when people qualify, that doesn't mean that they can necessarily find a lawyer who's willing to work for them. So it will be really interesting to see whether this expansion in the number of hours will have an impact on convincing more lawyers that it's worth taking legal aid files and sort of taking on some of this work with clients. So very exciting times.
Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Kim Hawkins is Executive Director with the Rise Women's Legal Center. It's 12:39 now, 1:39 in the Mountain Time Zone. Well, it is Black History Month, and while looking at the past, we look at ways to improve the present. Black entrepreneurs face some unique challenges. And so the people behind a pitch contest aim to help businesses overcome those barriers. It's called the Black Pitch Contest. It's run by the Black Entrepreneurs and Businesses of Canada Society. We'll hear from them in just a moment. We're asking you as well, do you make it a point to support Black-owned businesses? What are your own experiences as a Black Canadian entrepreneur? Love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us too, bctoday@cbc.ca. And I have two guests with me for this conversation. Candice Lauren is with the Black Entrepreneurs and Businesses of Canada Society. She's the founding director of communications and mentorship. And Dares Ashadam is an entrepreneur and was a finalist in this contest last year. He's a creator of the Vaster app. Good afternoon to you both. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Very good to have you. Tell us first, Candice, about this contest. Why is it needed?
It's so needed in this community because we know that as Black entrepreneurs, we are underrepresented in the mainstream business community. And so the BABC is really here to create different avenues of possibility for entrepreneurs to get the access to the tools, the services, the funding that they need. And so this particular pitch contest, it's very exciting. This is our first year of a hybrid experience. We had a very successful 2023 pitch, and we'll hear from Dares in a moment. But we are awarding $25,000 in prizes to different Black founders from across the nation. And we really wanted to make sure that this initiative was barrier-free. So what that means is that anyone can enter. It's a quick 2-minute video sharing with us about how this can make an impact. What is your vision for your business? How would you use this funding to propel your dream, and so much more. So we're excited. This contest has been running for a while now in competition. And what we're doing is we're opening it up until tomorrow for applicants. But because of demand, we are going all the way to next week, Tuesday, to give more Black founders the opportunity to be a part of this. It's just so meaningful.
You're getting an influx, are you?
We are. It shows the demand, right?
Yeah.
It's really necessary in our community for several reasons.
It's interesting, the number of Black-owned enterprises in Canada is growing, but it still represents a really small fraction of all the businesses in Canada. And the businesses also tend to be smaller and less profitable. You touched on it a little bit, but what are those challenges for Black entrepreneurs who want to start a business or are running a business and want to grow it?
I know that we are in Black History Month, so this is a beautiful time to discuss this, but we talk about this all year long because it is the reality of what we face. A lot of Black entrepreneurs have unique challenges and obstacles. And I know we talk about racism, we talk about discrimination, but a lot of it also stems from lack of capital. And there's also things such as intergenerational injustice, oppression. There's so much that we deal with on a daily basis as Black founders. And that's why for us, creating this contest is really, really key, because we need to create these platforms to amplify voices in safe spaces so that other founders can feel that they can achieve those dreams. It's always, when I think about being an entrepreneur, it's a very vulnerable place to be. When you put yourself out there and you're sharing your dream and you're saying, hey, this is me and this is what I want to do in the world. Embrace this, buy this, connect with me. It's not easy. And so we know about the unique challenges being discriminated against, of course, for so long. There's a lot of trust that's not there in the Black community when it comes to things such as government, banks, other types of institutions. And so this is our way of creating harmony and creating collaboration and creating new opportunities and just empowering and inspiring Black founders to know that they can do it. They are supported, and we will be with them from ideation all the way to launch.
Dares, tell us about your own story. How vulnerable did you feel with your dream?
Oh, very vulnerable. This is actually the second iteration of a product that we first developed, and we were going to launch right before COVID. And when the world changed, we had to start from scratch and do a pivot. And so the vulnerability is there on a daily basis, like most entrepreneurs. But the challenges that we face are unique in nature. And so having this competition, having this platform, having this stage to speak about and shed light on some of the challenges that we face When I did it last year, the support that I got was overwhelming. And so even having that spotlight and highlighting the challenges, the unique challenges that we face, I think helps the community as a whole, and it helps society as a whole, because there are great ideas, there are great products, there are great businesses that don't get to see the light of day because of lack of opportunity.
And what was your own dream? Well, what did you set out to do for yourself? You were a finalist last year. What was it? Tell us about your dream.
Yeah, look, my dream is to create products that have meaningful impact in people's lives. At our core, the technologies that we develop are to help people understand what it is that they're consuming, so that they can make informed decisions. I didn't start the business in a bubble. I started it because of a lived problem. The original product was in the nutrition sector, and it had to do with my father having gone through a heart procedure and having to change his diet and be able to monitor and keep track of everything that he was consuming. And so to make it easier and convenient for him, I built a product, and then I saw a wider use for that product. And so I wanted to share it with the world.
It was an app. You created an app to do that.
Correct. I created an app. Yeah.
Wow. And so how important is, you participated last year. You said it's made a big difference. What kind of difference has it made for you?
Well, just the awareness of the product that we've built, the awareness of the technology that we've built in the many different applications. One of the best highlights of that pitch competition was somebody pulled me aside after that pitch and said, it was a personal story about how this product can impact her life and impact her relationships with her family, who is a family member who's going through a health crisis, and they need, in this particular case, cannabis. And there's a lot of misinformation around product and misunderstanding, and especially with the industry being so young, it's important for people to understand and be able to access information in real time so that they can make informed decisions.
I can hear the help that it lent to your business. What about you personally?
Yeah, just being, entrepreneur. The entrepreneur life is a lonesome journey.
Yeah.
And so when you have a community of people that are championing you, supporting you, and wanting for you to succeed, and giving you supports, whether it's monetary or otherwise, that's a huge boost. As an entrepreneur, on a personal level, it means the world to me.
Candace, having that community, and you talked about it earlier as well, and it brought to mind for me visibility. How important is that?
Awareness is so key. Like, change cannot happen until the conversations are had. The conversations cannot be had until there is awareness and things are put on the table. And so the amazing thing about this Black Pitch contest is that winners and the finalists, they're going to gain access to advisory circles, one-on-one mentoring. It's a valuable avenue for networking. I always talk about staying connected to someone that is 5 steps ahead of you, mentoring someone that's 5 steps behind you, and just creating that sense of community and growth and elevation that this community really needs from coast to coast around the world, really. And I love this work. It's such meaningful work because I know that this is something that will help our economy. There are so many Black voices and Black entrepreneurs that are brilliant, that have so much to give. And so every day that I do this work, it brings my heart so much joy. And it's exciting as well because this summit for the first time is this pitch is mixed in with our summit. So the winner will be announced on May 24th and 25th at our Black Business Summit. So all of this information can be found on our website, which is bbcsociety.org. And yeah, if there are any Black founders, if you're listening and you are a Black founder looking for funding, please join us. And if you know anyone else, definitely as well.
And how does it work? Like, is it kind of like Dragon's Den? Like, how do you make your pitch in front of the crowd?
That would be amazing. Honestly, I love that. But we wanted to just remove some barriers when it comes to putting yourself out there. It's not always easy. And we know that just based on statistics, public speaking is like one of the most top, fears that most people have regarding race. And so what we wanted to do is just make it very simple. Most, competitions need you to fill out a bunch of paperwork. We're not about that. We really care more about the ideas and giving that platform. So it's really quick, really easy. Just take a quick 90-second to 2-minute video and just introduce yourself, describing who you are, your business idea, where you're at in business, the stages, and what you're hoping to achieve with the funding. And then submit it. And the cool thing about it is that we don't leave people there. There will be public voting this year, so we will be getting people from coast to coast to learn more and give Black businesses the exposure that they really need. But we're also going to be supplying the coaching as well, right? Because people need to feel comfortable public speaking. They need to know, how do I pitch this correctly? How do I position this statement, and how do I, get clear with this 2 minutes that I have? How can I make it the most efficient and effective? So we have a lot of community partners as well that help us to roll out with the training leading up to that final pitch. But I encourage anyone, sometimes honestly, it just takes one person to say, I believe in you. I see you. You've got this. Yes. Take that leap, take that risk. And so that's why we're here, is just to really give everyone that opportunity.
Having been part of this, Candace, is there a business that sticks out for you? A person whom you've seen just grow?
Oh my gosh, there have been so many founders that have come through and are still with us. So as we have Duress here with us, we've seen the Vaster app go from, different stages. We have, there's an amazing founder, his name is Moenda. And he is really all about sustainability with his organization, and we'll have him actually come back. He was a competitor last year, so he's coming back, and he's going to try again for that funding. And it's beautiful because we also have our youth program. So we've seen a lot of youth founders take their ideas from start to finish. So there are so many founders, too many to list, all over Canada. But I just want to take a moment and just show them all some love. If you're listening, whether you're a part of the community or not, I just want to acknowledge you for believing in yourself and taking that step.
Well, and it is a challenging time for any small business right now, dealing with things like inflation or even interest rates if you're trying to get loans. Duress, how are you doing with your app, or how are you doing with the challenges for small businesses generally?
Yeah, it's extremely challenging, and these types of assistance programs or non-dilutive funding, if you will, help us get our product further along. And so, and in tech, you can't simply go to a bank or lending institution and say, I have an idea. It doesn't work that way. You have to build a business, proof of concept, get to revenue, and then you get taken, banks or lending institutions will take a look at you. If you don't have that baseline, if you can't get to that start phase, your idea dies in the vine. And so it's these types of programs, these types of supports that help us get launched so that we can get to a place where we can take advantage of loans or other lending institutions.
Candace, what are you hearing from businesses in terms of the challenges right now?
Oh, we hear a lot. But a lot of the recurring comments and feelings regarding that, and even based on data, a lot of surveys, they've repeatedly shown that Black Canadians, as I was mentioning earlier, they lack the trust. They feel shut out. Oftentimes, a lot of Black founders cannot get access to the business loans or the financing that they're looking for their businesses. And so that's why we create programs like this. We even have a financial literacy program that we are launching very soon. But this is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to be heard, to be seen, but it's a chance of winning a substantial amount of funding that could really make a difference for someone's business. And so we hear a lot of feelings, but a lot of it is discouraging. I cannot lie, right? You lose the motivation. As Duress mentioned earlier, being an entrepreneur has its peaks and valleys. Sometimes you feel like you're on top of the mountain, and sometimes you're like, why did I do this? So,
questioning your life decisions.
Yes. And so we at BBC, we're here throughout all of those, those peaks and valleys to say, hey, we understand it's not always easy, but here is an avenue. And here are some collaborative partners that are doing amazing work that you can also find some resources as well. And so I would just say that, I hear a lot. I hear joy, I hear sadness, I hear frustration, but again, it is all a part of the entrepreneurial journey, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
What about for you? Tell us about how you got started as a business person, Candace.
Oh my gosh. Well, I got started by looking at my mom, really. I admire my mom. She is a very strong, hardworking woman. And I saw her build her side business. She was a social worker for a long time for the Children's Aid Society in Toronto. And I saw her go there every morning, racing in her car, getting to work, coming home. But then I saw her start to build her own private practice in counseling and therapy.
Wow.
And I saw her make those changes in people's lives. She can't get into all the details for confidentiality purposes, but she did share with me that she's helped a ton of people. And I've seen the heart within her for the kids at Children's Aid translated over into the work that she does now with families. And so for me, consulting, marketing, design, communications, all the things have been what's really important to me. And I just love helping. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Black founder, but any entrepreneur take their ideas, create and craft their stories, connect with who it is that they're serving in the world, and really connect. For me, it's all about connecting genuinely and authentically.
Wow.
And that's what I love to do.
And what does your mom feel about how you're doing?
Okay, listen, if I'm being completely transparent, there are moments where she's like, why are you doing this? Mom,
Yes,
guys,
she's a mom.
I love it.
Are you
I
getting
love
enough
it.
sleep? Yeah.
Yeah, like she worries about all these things, but it's because I'm so passionate. I just, like I said, my life, I cannot go back. I know that it is who I am to the core. And so that's why for me, I don't see it that way, but I just know that I'm meant to continue to make impact. And that's why all of
Yeah.
these amazing opportunities have come, just simply because I'm putting that out there and I'm receiving that.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because, I come from a minority community, and business people are leaders in the community, right? And are role models. And Doris, do you see yourself as a role model?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a part of the responsibility is that Candace touched on this earlier. You have to reach 5 steps back and help somebody else. And so because I know the challenges that exist for me, a part of this is to make it easier for those that come after us, to pave the way. And that's a part of the responsibility and a part of the reason that you keep going. It's that entrepreneurial disease, if you will. I have it. And so you just got to keep pushing through. And if you can blaze a trail, help make it easier for somebody else, regardless of what they look like or where they come from. I think Canada is built on entrepreneurship. It's a part of what makes the fabric of our society so great. Given the opportunity, there's so many wonderful ideas that can come to life and make society a better place.
Great to speak with both of you. Good luck with the contest.
Thank you very much.
Michelle.
Candace Lauren with the Black Entrepreneurs and Businesses of Canada Society. Doris Ashkedam is an entrepreneur, was a finalist in the contest last year.